So Reality Czars podcast. How brave of you. Nate and Paranoid American may think that they're merely discussing cryptozoology, interdimensional realities, and crude humor. But know this, listening to this podcast puts you on a certain list, the Clinton body count, if you will. The truths they reveal are not for the faint of heart, nor the blissfully ignorant. Listen if you dare, but remember, some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. And now, your hosts, those audacious explorers of forbidden knowledge, the Reality Czars, Nate and Paranoid American.
And we're live. Welcome, everybody. This is the Reality Czars podcast, and we are hosts tonight, Nate and Tom, is the Paranoid motherfucking American.
Hey, friends.
We are honored. We are privileged. We have Mike Ricksecker joining us again. Thank you, brother, for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, Thomas, great to be back with you guys.
So the last time we were talking, we talked about all kinds of wild stuff, but then you were talking about you were in the process of getting your book about time travel out. Yep. And man, I listened to the episode you did with Chris Matthew not that long ago, and it was super fascinating, man. I haven't read the book yet, but I'm going to. I have too many. I have a stack right now of books that I need to get through. But I'm really excited to talk to you, man. This is awesome. Can you tell our audience the name of your book and what's the best place they can buy it? Do they buy through your website better than Amazon, something like that? And tell us all the good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The name of the book is Travels Through Time Inside the Fourth Dimension, Time Travel and Stacked Time Theory. And my website, sure, you can go there. You can also find it through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can go to your brick and mortar store. If they don't have it there, they can order it for you. So you have a lot of options as far as where you can find it. It's available on audio too.
Heck yeah, man.
Did you do the audio? Did you read it?
I did, yes. Yeah, I read my own audiobooks.
Nice.
You have a good voice for that. You have like a soothing, nice, I would like the book read by you.
Yeah, and I'll put you right to sleep. Yeah. But I appreciate that.
Cool, man. So I think also like the last time we talked to you, you were about to head out to Egypt. How did that go? Everything went good?
It's been that long? That was back in February. Wow. Okay. I thought it was more recent that I talked to you guys. Yeah, Egypt was great. We were out there 2 weeks in February, so it was a little chillier than what you usually expect for Egypt. We're actually headed back in April, by the way. So for any of your viewers and listeners, April 16th to the 28th, Stargates of Ancient Egypt Tour 2. But yeah, it was wonderful. We hit once again, we had inside the Great Pyramid of Giza 2 hours, just our little group. The whole thing was opened up to us, and we'll be doing the same thing again in April too. So that's just magical. Being able to have that kind of access for that long is fantastic. And so, up and down the Nile River. As you go up and down the river, you're hitting the different temples, and it's where you can find some of these different stargates and other mysteries that we have a great tour guide, Mohammed Ibrahim, and he's a native there to Egypt. He's been doing the tours for over 20 years. He is an Egyptologist, and we get all the inside scoops because he knows everybody. We get special access all over the place. So this past time when we were at Abydos, and it was getting toward the end of the day, the crowds were petering out, and he was like, "Mike, you ever been in this back room over there?" No. So he grabs one of his guys, opens it up. Our group goes in, and he proceeds to tell us that this is where Seti had hung out when they were. This was like her favorite room when they were restoring the Temple of Seti at Abydos, and she's the woman that when she had actually died at a very, very young age, was revived. But while she was out, she had all of these visions of being in ancient Egypt, and when she went back there, she was finding all kinds of things that people didn't know about before because she had these visions of the past life there. So this was her favorite room that people don't usually get access to. So that was really special. All kinds of things like that just happened throughout our tour.
I'm curious, like
That's
right
so
now
cool,
in
man.
2023, how serious do tour guides and just like Egyptologists in general take like the threat of, say, a curse? Is that just like silly things for children now, or is that a legitimate thing that comes up?
There's respect for the different locations and sites. So not so much as in a curse, like the whole idea of, the curse of King Tut, and how several people from Howard Carter's expedition had died in very strange and mysterious ways. Some of it can be attributed to, they were entering into a tomb that hadn't been opened in for so long, in the different particulates that would come out of such a place that the modern human body would be used to. So there's some of that, but they're very reverent and respectful of their locations. So, even though, the hieroglyphs are there right on the walls, and a lot of people, try to go and touch, and you're like, no, don't touch, even though there's tons of them all over the place. The oils from the fingers, of course, can cause damage and things like that. So they have a respect for it all.
But it's honor system currently? Like if you went there and you just wanted to do damage, it seems like you'd be able to do damage.
You don't want to do that. There are
Well,
there
I'm
are,
not, we're not
there are
endorsing
gentlemen
that
with
here.
there are gentlemen with guns there.
Okay.
No,
It's not just like the museum will, like the ushers will escort you out swiftly. Like you might actually get an AK in your face or what?
Oh yeah. There are armed guards there, and it's it's twofold. One, yes, they're protecting the place, but two, they're also protecting you. It's safe to travel over there, but you don't want to venture too far off the path, because there are some the more seedy areas of the towns are very can be very corrupt and seedy. So they just kind of keep that element out. Muhammad keeps us in a really nice safety bubble the whole time. But yeah, you don't want to go damaging. You'll find yourself in a prison there somewhere if you purposely vandalize or damage something. You don't want that.
Did you hear that, Nate?
Yeah, I did. I would never vandalize or damage something like that.
Yeah, a lot of these are part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. So yeah.
As a teenager, like the side of like a Walmart or a Target with me and a can of spray paint, that was open season, but never something like nothing like a pyramid or some hieroglyphs.
Nah, you don't want to do that. And enough damage has been done over the years by, people that were explorers. We know that there are chambers above the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid of Giza because there was a rumor that there was more things above, and they threw a stick of dynamite up there and lit the thing off. So there has been some crazy stuff like that done over the years.
And then I've also heard numerous stories of mummies' bodies being used as as a medicinal substance in the 1800s and things like that. So lots of bodies and things like that. Mummies' bodies were vandalized, correct? Like,
yeah,
didn't they think it was like good for you? So they were like gobbling mummy powder,
right?
Yeah. Like that.
Yeah, ingesting the ancients and things like that. They are very, very protective of their mummies over there. So the museum that has the royal mummies, the Egyptian Civilization Museum, it's in a special area on the lower level of the museum, and they will not let you take any photos down there. Like it's not just, we don't want you taking flash photos, which would of course quicken the deterioration, but they want you to take no photos whatsoever. And they have people stationed all throughout. And the first time that I was there was a group of schoolgirls that were down there, and they went to go take a selfie against a wall where there were no mummies or anything behind them. And here comes one of the guards, and he's grabbing the phone, he's calling the teacher over, and he's like, this needs to be removed right now. And there's no mummy in the photo. It was a wall, but it was in that room.
Is that a respect thing?
That is, I would say it's part in respect and part there's a business side to that as well.
Oh, right.
You know?
You got to pay to
So
see this.
yeah, you have to pay to get into the mummy area there and see that special. So yeah. And there's some other locations like
I get that.
the Mask of King Tut, which is at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. They don't want you taking pictures of that, but I'll tell you this: those guys are a little bit more lenient there than at the Civilization Museum because there's all kinds of people that'll you pick up their cell phone, looking around, and you'll hear the guy back behind just kind of lazily, no photo, no photo. And they don't make him take it off.
He doesn't have an AK-47.
He doesn't have. Yeah, that guy doesn't have an AK. No, that's more of at some of the temples and things like that. They're a little bit more out in the country, or you'll find that at the Great Pyramid and the Giza Plateau as well, because that's the city butts right up against those pyramids. You don't see it in the photos that people take, but it's the city is basically around the pyramids now. It's actually kind of sad.
That's funny, man. I mean, I don't know why this reminds me of it, but it kind of does. A couple of years ago, I was with my wife and we were at Yellowstone, and there's signs everywhere because there's all these natural formations, right, with all this water that's coming down, and it's like hot and it's like sulfur. It has like different minerals and stuff in it. And, there's signs and like telling you like to stay out of the water, stay like, and you're on like a platform, and and there's a group of Chinese tourists, and this one little guy just like jumps in the pond, jumps in the puddle, and starts splashing around, and like grabs a I guess like a jar and started like getting some of the water and started drinking it, and then you just see you just see the rangers like screaming from the back, "Hey!" and they go and rush the dude and like drag him out of there. Pretty funny stuff, but hey, Mike, I think Thomas, you can still see and hear me.
Okay, there we go.
I think Mike was frozen.
Yeah, dropped there for a
Okay, there we
second
go.
for some strange reason. So, but I got the story that you're talking about. Yeah, I've seen that like at Yellowstone. Don't go off the path, like around Old Faithful. Don't go off the path because you get the hot water springing out. And there was when I was there as a teenager, there was a bison at the end of the path. Yeah, like you said, it was I think in this case it was Japanese tourists, and they got the cameras. They're getting closer and closer and closer to the bison. It's like, oh, this is going to end ugly. Yeah.
Are there ways that
Oh,
people
yeah.
can get like badly hurt or anything in these? Because I'm just thinking like some of the places that I've been that require you to traverse some sketchy terrain, and at one misstep and you fall off the side of a mountain and you're dead. Like, is there any correlation of that and like the pyramids and the other ruins?
Well, there are some places you have to kind of crawl through. Egypt, being in the desert, a lot of it is flat terrain. There's some hills. There's some cliffs, I suppose, as you go through like the Valley of the Kings, but none of that are you on top. You're going through the valley and walking through. You do have to I would say, you got to have your walking shoes through the temples. The pyramids are a little bit more of a challenge because when you're going down those shafts, now the Great Pyramid, you're basically going up. The public part of it is up. Our access, we get down to the subterranean chamber, so you have the shaft that goes downwards, and those are tough because you're kind of crawling. And the Bent Pyramid is actually tougher than the Great Pyramid of all things. That's because it's at a much steeper angle. So, you're not going to slip and fall down that. It's you're going to get really, really winded. You might bang a knee or something like that. Let's see, there in the temple.
Is this like a no fatties kind of excursion?
I would say, yeah. We had some bigger people.
No one would get like clog up the like
right.
the shaft.
No, I get what you're saying, but we had some bigger people, and it was everything was still fine. It was if you could physically make it, down there and up without having a heart attack, you were fine. And then really it's we spend a few days at the pyramids, and then most of it is walking around the temples. There's a far more going on with the temples and like the Valley of the Kings and all that than there are with the pyramids, because you only have a handful of pyramids, but the temples are everywhere. And then you get the nice relaxation time on the cruise.
That's awesome, man. So when you're at these ancient sites, do you feel like I guess do you get a spiritual experience when you're in these places?
Oh
Do
yeah.
you feel like you're in I mean,
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
it's really wild. The first time that I was there, I was just kind of awestruck. You're walking into these massive buildings. You're like, how in the world did they do this? It just blows your mind. It's like over your head. And there is an energy there. There's definitely a palpable energy. The second time that I was there, I was able to kind of more tune in and appreciate that energy, because I wasn't as awestruck this time around. But even still, it is really freaking amazing.
Heck yeah, man. So I don't know how we want to start working our way into your book, but I want to talk a little time travel. I mean, we could even start with that one lady that you were discussing. I found that endlessly fascinating. I've heard about this lady, so I'm going to tell you what I know about her, and then you correct me where I'm wrong. So I'd heard this story about this young lady. She had like a near-death experience, right? Or maybe she even died, and then like her parents took her to I think took her to a museum, and she found the Egyptian she had found the Egyptian exhibit, and remembered a past life that she had, and she just had all this knowledge, and freaked everybody out because she knew things that nobody else knew and things like that. And that's about the majority of what I know about her. She seems like a really interesting lady.
Yeah, that was Seti. That's who we were talking about at the very beginning.
Yeah,
when we're talking about the
the
room at Abydos that we got access to, and that was her favorite room, and basically she slept in there. But yeah, that's essentially what happened, where she had had an accident. She had been dead for a short period of time, was revived, and then going to the museum, she had all these recollections of Egypt, and she believed that she had been there in a past life. Yeah, totally blew everybody away. And then of course she naturally went into the field of Egyptology.
How much
That's so cool, man.
how much past life regression and people tapping into, I guess, supernatural means actually influence our current understanding of ancient Egypt? Is it like a fringe, or is there actually a substantial amount?
Yeah, it's interesting, because when you are tapping into those lives, you are getting a glimpse of the past. And so I guess it really kind of depends on who you're working with, right? Because there's so much within this field. There's people who are doing it right, there's people who are legitimate, and then there are people, and it's sad, there are people who are frauds, and that's something that has really kind of hurt this field. And so it's why there are so many people that are really skeptical of what we do and the research that we're actually undertaking. So with those regressions, you have to take into account who you're actually working with here. But there are a lot of legitimate people that have done those. They have seen those moments from the past, whether it's in Egypt, or they're seeing other moments throughout our history, or even moments in the future. We are getting glimpses and some information of things that happened the way things were.
Hey, Mike, have you ever thought about doing past life regression, or have you before?
I have,
And
yeah.
Okay, because I'm curious about that. Like, how did you even get down this rabbit hole? How did you become the Mike Ricksecker that we know and love today? Like, how did you get down into this this
Right.
field, and what made you interested in all this? And
Yeah, well, when it comes to Egypt, Well, growing up in the 80s, I think we were all, at least many of us, are very interested in Indiana Jones. Kind of sparked some creative juices, but or adventurous juices, I should say. Uh, Egypt specifically, as far as like the hidden mysteries behind it. So, kind of almost back to back, you had the Mysteries of the Sphinx special presentation that came out. Charlton Heston was the host, but it was the work by Robert Schock and John Anthony West when they basically redated the Sphinx using geology. And then right after that, the movie Stargate came out. Yeah. And so that was like back to back like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on, in Egypt, so many, mysteries that are still there to be solved. And so that's why I went down that route. Where it comes to the past life regression, that had to do with an experience that I had much, much younger in my life when I was about 8 years old. And I had an experience with what we would call a shadow person, and woke up in the middle of the night, and there was this tall, dark figure standing in the corner of my room that got physically interactive with me. Didn't hurt me or harm me, but had taken my risk, crossed my arms across my body, and ran off down the hall. And as a young child, I was very frightened of this. As I got older, just kind of thinking about it, and of course getting involved with the paranormal and supernatural, I definitely reflecting back on that experience and talking with others who had similar experiences. It's like, the thing never actually harmed me. Yeah, it physically touched me, but it never actually harmed me. And I had a couple of people suggest that maybe it thought that I was dead, lying there in my bed and putting me into a burial pose, like out of ancient Egypt, crook and flail sort of thing. It's like, okay, that's an interesting idea. Maybe that was the case. And so I had the past life regression to find out more information about that particular incident. And the woman that I worked with, Ariana Corsino, she was trained through Dolores Cannon School. That's a very, very reputable school for doing that type of work. We'd first done just basic past life regression. Let's see what we can get back to. And so I did get to see a vision of a past life that was more like medieval time. But then we start specifically working on that particular moment in my life, and when I was 8. And it was really, really fascinating that we actually channeled that particular entity. And I actually got to see the whole scene from the perspective of the shadow being, basically looking down onto my 8-year-old self and seeing the whole thing play out. And the crossing of my arms across my body like that was actually it trying to put me into a self-hug, because it didn't know at first that I could see it until I started reacting. And then it felt bad that it was scaring me. So it was trying to put me to a self-hug. And I got to see it kind of pat my wrist, which was different. I hadn't seen that before, when I was 8. And then it ran off down the hall to get out of there. So Ariana's following up on this, asking questions like, what were you doing there? And so basically, this was an entity that was there on a research mission, to discover more about humanity, to study. She had asked, "Where are you from?" And the response was, "I'm from another space." And she asked, "Well, do you mean like another dimension?" And its response was, "Well, you might call it another dimension, but really it's another space." So giving us kind of this idea that what we think we know about the universe and how it works is a bit different than what we've come to understand so far. But in our conventional terms, this was essentially an interdimensional being that had come into the room to study humanity. It woke me up or whatever it did, but I was having a bad reaction to it, and it got out of there.
That's super fascinating, man. I sometimes think about that because, like, as a kid, that was like my fantasies to become invisible, and so I used to like think about so like that would almost be like being an interdimensional being. It's like you're just walking around and from its perspective, like it's not expecting you to see it. It's there to just kind of like monitor, check it out, like look around, and then it sees you see it and freak out. Like that to me is
Mhm.
super fascinating, and
Yeah.
it kind of freaks me out just because I'm like, is there someone standing right behind me right now? I
Oh,
have
there are
no idea.
plenty of things around us that we can't see right now that are
Are they
definitely going
judging
on
us?
around us.
Like, do they see you eat like that extra slice of pizza and they're like, Yeah. Does that? Do you think that concept
Are
even
they
exists?
making bets though? They're like, I bet that fat ass is going for a fifth
It
slice.
could be.
Like over and under. Yeah, he's going for
Yeah.
a fifth slice of pizza.
He's looking at it. He's looking at it. You know, here comes the money. Yeah. They could be, you know. Yeah, what's really interesting. So our theoretical physics have in their math and their research and all that have at least so far come up with the concept that we have up to 11 dimensions. And right now we're in the fourth, right? So which is time. Time doesn't really exist. It's a human construct. You know, it's a measuring tool that we use to describe our reality so that we can keep track of the seasons, know when to plant the crops, show up at work at the right moment, that sort of stuff. So we live in the fourth. Everything that is below that is freely accessible to us. So like three-dimensional objects and lines and planes, all that sort of stuff. Our consciousness is what's fascinating about us as humans. We're multidimensional people. We're multidimensional beings. So we have our consciousness, which is on the fourth dimension of time, living within a third dimensional vessel that is our body. But fifth dimension on up, 5, 6, 7, 8, those would view time like we view a three-dimensional object. It's all there for them to access in and out of, at will. So somebody that's in the fifth or sixth dimension could just sit there and say, well, I'm going to slide into 2023, see what's going on. Or they might go to 1923 or 1223 or whatever. They would have that access to go to 2523, for whatever means or purpose that they would have to do that. Time is more like an object to those beings in other dimensions.
That's fascinating, Mike. Do you think that we get access to these other dimensions when we die? Do you I'm a weird Christian that believes in reincarnation, and I think that we are like endless energy that is stuck inside of this, like, I don't know, walking hamburger. And so when we get outside of here, when we're free, when we're liberated from this suit, do we get access to these different realms? Do you think we get to go to the eighth, ninth? I want to be able to access time.
It's certainly, I get it. That is certainly one idea in concept, that wherever it is that we go to, and I believe in reincarnation as well, wherever that we go to after we pass is one of these other dimensions, or perhaps some other dimension beyond that we really haven't gotten a firm grasp of yet. So the idea being that we come down here for a while, live within this realm here, the fourth dimension, pass on to that other higher dimension somewhere there, and we interact with some of these different beings from those other dimensions when we have spirits of loved ones and things like that come back, and maybe they impart some knowledge on us or have some interaction with us. Not necessarily ghosts per se, because I believe ghosts, like a true ghost, is somebody that they've lost the third dimensional body, but their fourth dimension consciousness is still here within this dimension. They haven't moved to that other dimension. But others that have passed on can choose to come back, either if they're a loved one visiting us, but then of course we come back into a third dimensional body again, whatever that process is. And there's a lot of different theories, and there's religious ideology and things like that come into play when we talk about that. But that's that constant cycle that we talk about when, of course, we start talking about like simulated universe and things like that as well.
When you talk about the fourth dimension as being like, if you were in the fifth dimension looking down at the fourth, and you just see basically someone's entire timeline as like a objective thing that you can like poke and prod at, does that affect your concept of free will at all? Like if your entire fourth dimension existence is right out there for someone in the fifth dimension to analyze, doesn't that take any agency away from you in the third dimension?
Yeah, the idea of free will is still possible. We still have the ability to go ahead and make our own decisions in life. Now that will the repercussions of that is a change in the timeline. That things are always in flux. They're always in motion. Not just the present, the future, and the past as well. So some of these different, like when we talk about strange, like the Mandela effect, strange things that seem to have changed. And I don't really necessarily mean all the like little crazy branding things that have changed. That'd be trivial for somebody to kind of want to toy with. But those type of effects will happen because somebody made another decision a long time ago, or we even have time travelers that can go back and change something as well. But yeah, it doesn't negate free will. It just means that there's going to be a change somewhere along the timeline.
It's interesting, man. I like to believe in free will, and most of the time I believe in free will, but I think that's just me being stubborn.
Well,
but
here's where I believe in free will, and that's not to try to get gushy or anything, but free will has to exist because love exists. You can't truly love someone without making that decision. If it was all pre-programmed, like, okay, here's this person, I have to love them now because it was pre-programmed. That's not really love, that takes a real hardcore decision to be able to love someone.
Maybe, although so much of love is just geographic convenience, is it not?
It is not geographic convenience with my fiance and I live in Cleveland, Ohio. She lives in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, which is where I'm at right now. This is not geographically convenient. 652 miles, man. No.
Yeah, buddy. No, I think you're absolutely right about that. I think about different, man, there's been movies that have talked about this. There's been books that have talked about this. And like, if that is like your soulmate, then you've probably fallen in love multiple times in multiple different lives and different things like that. I love that idea. I think it's super fascinating. And I think maybe some people that are unhappy are the ones that make the mistake and they, out of convenience, they marry the wrong person or something like that. And
let me tell you an interesting little story. And this made the book. The idea of the future being able to influence the past or the present. Just mentioning my fiance Jen here. We've actually known each other since first grade. Like we've known each other forever. We had met when I had lived in Massachusetts as a kid. Her family's still there in that town, and we were in the library one day. I hadn't really had much interaction with her up to this point. I'm just going through a stack of books looking for a good read, and all of a sudden, boom, she lays a kiss right on my cheek. And 6 years old, I'm like, what the heck was that? Blushing and everything. Had no idea where that came from. But that was essentially my first kiss, hers as well. And so we were kind of in and out of each other's lives there. We're fourth grade together, seventh. We actually kind of quote unquote dated as 12-year-olds there for a month, but I was too scared to hold her hand. So, it ended. And then I moved away to Ohio and we fell out of touch for many, many years until lo and behold, social media comes along and we reconnected about 15 years ago. And so, we caught up, whenever our paths would cross, we'd go out for dinner or whatever. But we were each with people at that time. But I did ask her, so what in the world was that kiss that you gave me on the cheek all those years ago? And she said, I don't know. You just had a little chubby cheek, cute little chubby cheek sitting out there, and something told me to kiss it. Okay, all right, fine, fair enough. So this, what was it? Last year. Not quite a year and a half ago now, I had my Ireland tour. She came out on the Ireland tour and boom, we just hit it off. We're both single at the time. And this, one thing led to another and, we were together. And so when we came back stateside, we decided to go back to our old hometown, visit our old haunts. We went back to that school, which is now actually part of the university there. They've made it a performing arts center. But we're walking around outside, peeking through windows and things like that. We go to where that library is, and we're looking in the window there, and they've turned it into like a little music room or whatever. We're pointing at the spot. Yeah, that's where the kiss happened. And Jen starts yelling through the window, kiss him, kiss him. And, we're laughing about it, thinking it's, cute and all that. When we were driving away, I was like, wait a minute. Jen's story of kissing me on the cheek to begin with was something had told her to kiss me on the cheek. She didn't know what. So was it her 48-year-old self calling back to her 6-year-old self in like this endless loop to kiss me on the cheek and get this whole thing started? Kind
I
of
like to
interesting to think
so.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, you told that story on Chris's show, and
Did I?
loved
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, please.
I like telling that one. I like telling that one.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. I really, really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
You were talking about actual time travelers before. My
Yeah.
entry, like outside of, I guess, Back to the Future and Time Cop and, Bill and Ted, but John Teeter was this name that started popping up in like the mid to late 90s. And he was supposed to be someone that came from the future back into the past and was telling everyone about these oncoming wars and technology. And like, first of all, have you heard of John Teeter? And have there been other John Teeters that flew under the radar?
Well, there are interesting people that come along that do claim to be time travelers. So I've seen some of these now where they're pointing back at some black and white photo out of the 1800s and saying, "Oh, that's me right there." And you're looking at it, and it's like it's kind of blurry and fuzzy, and it's hard to really know and hard to tell. So when it comes to something like that, to me, it's okay. What do I know about the person, and can I take them at their word? Because the question becomes, okay, how do you actually prove that? Now, I believe that real time travel isn't a DeLorean and a flux capacitor. It's going to have more to do with consciousness. It has more to do with energy, resonance, frequency, and vibration, which is what the whole universe is made out of. And when we can tune ourselves into those specific moments, we can tune our frequency into the frequencies of those moments, then we will be able to experience them. We have things today that we refer to as time slips, where there is a bleed over from one moment into the next, and we get a glimpse of it. And you're looking at somebody that's maybe out of the 1700s or whatever, and you're like, oh, that it's a ghost, it's an apparition. And they turn and look at you as if you're the ghost, and it's like, oh, okay, that's not a ghost, it's not an apparition, it's actually a time slip. Where we're seeing each other for a brief moment. So I believe it's going to have more to do with that. And I always refer back to the movie Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour, where he was able to will his consciousness from 1980 back to 1912. And he was actually able to have a whole experience. That would be, kind of like the dream to get to that point, to be able to do that, to be able to keep your frequency at constant, to be able to experience like a full, what was he there for 2 days? That would be amazing. Richard Matheson, when he wrote the book, which the book was originally titled Bid Time Return, and then because of the movie changed it to Somewhere in Time, and he wrote the screenplay as well. In the book version, he actually has Richard going to the library, which happens in the movie as well. But the books that Richard is looking up in the library are actual real books on philosophy and science in regards to time travel that you can go and buy now today. So he based his research for that story off of real concepts regarding time and time travel. So he was certainly onto something. And I think it will have more to do with that than some of these people that are saying that, they built a time machine or climbed into a time machine and they're, from the future. We have stories of like some of these, people are saying some of these UAPs are time travelers from, they're not actually extraterrestrials, but they're us from the future. And I can get on board with some of that, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're human, because they could be time travelers from the future, indigenous here to Earth, but it could be millions. They could be for millions of years from now. Some other intelligent life form that has developed and developed time travel technology to come back, or they could be extraterrestrials millions of years from now that found Earth to colonize, built a civilization here, developed time travel technology, and came back. So, yeah, there's a lot of different ideas we can mull through here.
Or they actually could be your future reincarnation from millions of years from now, and really could be you looking at you. I don't know. It's fascinating.
Well, and that's a thing too. So, when we talk about reincarnation, and if all time is concurrent, past, present, future. So where you're sitting right now, every moment that has happened, is happening, and will happen, all there right now. Well, that means your past lives are also here present with us. So when you walk into a room that, let's say back in the 1800s or in the 2300s, that you have a past life there right now, is that where we're getting some of these like deja vu moments that, the room or the building or whatever seems really, really familiar to you? Because lo and behold, one of your other lives is there at the same time.
I mean, I absolutely think so. And I think a lot of times, we've talked about it on the show before, that I think in some circumstances, hauntings are you haunting yourself. Are you like, sorry, my baby's crying in the background.
That happens.
But I think a lot of times you're experiencing like some trauma, and you are experiencing some of your own past lives, and you're dealing with some trauma from your past life. And so these things happen like in your current life. And I think that you are kind of haunting yourself in a way.
In some ways, in that regard, yeah, those things from other lives will certainly affect you. To what degree, that's debatable, but yeah, those things stick with you, sure.
One other Back to the Future trope, just
Sure.
because it's the go-to. The almanac thing, right? Where you go into the future and you send yourself back the almanac, or you like. So does that, in your mind, does that work, or does it just not work at all because you sending the information back changes the past and whatnot? And then I guess tacking onto that, is it just such a trivial thing that if you had the power to time travel, like it wouldn't even be on your radar to get rich from sports bets and whatnot?
Then that's a good question too. Is it too trivial at that point that you don't need the money? Yeah. So if you were to do that, if you're like, oh, I just want to see if it's going to happen, I think it would at least work the first time. Your first bet, I think, would work. How that affects things from there, and it might work for the first few bets. But let's say you start rolling in the dough like Biff Tannen, and you're multi-million billionaire or whatever, and you decide to buy one of those sports teams now. That's really going to change what's in that almanac at that point, right? So so at some point things would change enough where the almanac is irrelevant at that point. So but yeah,
get your bets in early.
Yeah, get them in early. But yeah, it would probably be trivial to somebody who has that technology already. What would they really need that kind of money at that point if they have that ability to move in?
All they have are movies to go on, and like even in
I know, I totally get it. Yeah,
they go back to the Civil War and they steal gold, and it's I don't
right.
never understood it.
Well, gold has always had a value and always will have a value. So yeah, all of our world currencies at some point in time seem to die away. They'll have some sort of historical significance to them at some point as like an archaeological find. But gold always has a value to it, not just because we place one on it, but just because of the properties of it. It doesn't tarnish. It has electrical properties. It's very malleable. That's something that will always have a value to it.
You can even eat it as a chef. There were so many times I had to just put gold leaf on something. It was just a normal steak or something stupid, but people would put an extra bit of value on this worthless little sheet of gold that I would put on it, and they'd pay a lot more for it.
How much are those little sheets of gold?
They are cheap, dude. They are really cheap. I could get like 20 of them for, I think it was like $1, 20.
Oh my gosh.
Sheets. It was really, really cheap because they're so thin. It's almost nothing. But like we would take like a little like piece of foie gras, and we would put it over the top of it and put it on a steak, and we'd send it out there, and then I could charge like, I don't know, $150 for the steak that you could probably buy at Costco for $30. But
Yeah.
you know,
Or it's like drinking Goldschlager, right?
yeah. Oh, dude, memories,
Yeah.
good and bad.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But you ask some good questions, and you know what, pop culture has helped us to do in this regard, is help us to ask those questions, those what ifs, and get us thinking about these sorts of things. One I really like going to is Interstellar, because they take a scientific approach to it. And a lot of people were kind of put off by the end of the movie because they're like, oh, we have this great space odyssey going on. And then you throw all this theoretical stuff, about time travel in it. But they actually do, I think, a really, really good job of portraying what we call the tesseract, which is really, that physical representation of time. And the way they did it was with his daughter's bedroom, they showed every single moment in time of his daughter's bedroom as a physical object, and they had it all connected with like these strings and threads, which kind of harkening back to the idea of string theory. And it's like, yeah, this is what somebody in one of those higher spatial dimensions might really see when they look at time as an object. So some of these ideas that come out of our pop culture and sci-fi are really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of them sometimes too are maybe, I mean, the CIA is involved in Hollywood and things like that, and sometimes they put out ideas that they actually are working on, or definitely some truth to some of those things. I think that's fascinating too. But Mike, have you ever tried? Because you seem like a spiritual guy. You have a lot of like esoteric, really cool knowledge. Have you tried to do any time traveling yourself? Have you tried to?
So I tried when I was a kid, when I was 14. I did it a year to the day after I had moved from Massachusetts to Ohio, and I was homesick for going back and seeing my friends. And this is actually the introduction to the book. I tell this story, and having watched Somewhere in Time, I was attempting to travel back, the whole, I'm going to will my consciousness back to another point in time. Now, if I had actually pulled it off, I wasn't thinking of it at the time, but if I'd pulled it off, I would have woken up in that room that I was in at the time, my bedroom, a year or whatever would have been in the past, and I would have shocked some other kid that would have been in that room. Who's this? So what happened though, I was 14. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had put myself into a meditative state, not realizing that's what I was in, and that's what I was doing. So I was really calm. I was really relaxed, and I'm just thinking about going back in time. And I started feeling like this undulating current, like I was riding these waves, and it was like up and down and up and down. And then I started feeling this electrical tingle. I had no idea what was going on, and just boom, I snapped out of it because I was scared. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? No idea. So talking with people years later about that particular incident, they were telling me, well, you're on the verge of having an out-of-body experience. You're about to astral project. Now, the question is, would I have just astral projected to my room at that point in time, or would I have really succeeded in going back a year and appearing in that room a year prior? I don't know, but something was certainly about to happen before I spooked myself there. Yeah.
Mike, I tell you, I've done the exact same thing. Not exact, but like I've gotten myself to those places where I'm like in a meditative state, and maybe maybe I'm on a handful of mushrooms too, or something at that moment in time, trying to do something like that. And I scare myself out of it. I'm like, I'm on the verge of something, and I'm like, nope, I'm jumping off. I jump off the train. It's scary that you have to commit, and just kind of like, you don't know what's going to happen if you do it. and I don't personally like to feel out of control of situations like that. And that would, like, if I woke up in a different dimension or something like that, that would
Right.
be, I'd be very much out of control.
Yeah,
Have you
it's
ever
it.
considered
Go ahead.
trying that again?
Yeah, and I have on occasion tried the problem I have is I have so much going on. I'm running around all over the place. And I do meditate on a daily basis, but it's hard to unclutter my mind because there's so much going on up there right now. I I guess as a kid, I was a little more at ease when it came to that. Go figure that with all the teen drama and angst, right? But it's interesting that you mentioned the mushrooms because I just was out in LA filming a few episodes for a television show. Can't say which right now until the air. But one of the questions towards the end of that particular interview, we were talking more about strange phenomena and experiences and things like that. But the idea now to use hallucinogenics to enter into some of these different dimensions. Not advocating that, but it's become a really interesting conversation. And I'm kind of with you in the camp of, I don't like the idea of not being in control, and especially knowing that, hey, I've been on the verge of that before without, the hallucinogenics or like ayahuasca or the mushrooms or what have you. But I've heard some really, really fascinating stories from people of things that they have seen and experienced, perhaps even interdimensionally, or different beings that they've interacted with by using something like ayahuasca or what have you. So it's at least a fascinating study.
I'm the one here that does advocate, so I'll just be
Okay.
that. I'll bear that cross.
Go
I
for it.
advocate. Has the Blue Lotus come up at all in your research? Because I've always heard Blue Lotus as like the ancient Egyptians version of a psychedelic, but it also feels
Right.
that might be retroactively fit in a way.
Yeah, Muhammad talks about the Blue Lotus, that you see lotus depicted all over the place throughout Egypt, and it's basically a symbol of creation. And of course, they have lotus perfume and things like this there, where we go to get the oils, because that's always a special part of the tour too. Is we go to these different specialized shops to get different oils or papyrus or alabaster. It's fascinating. And so, like, this one place that we go, they don't export out. You have to buy it there. So it seems like the idea of the Blue Lotus is more of a legend, but again, these legends have a grain of truth somewhere within them. So it's trying to figure out, okay, what's the truth of the Blue Lotus story? There's something to it, but we're not exactly sure what that is.
So like soma a little bit. Like we know that the word was used and we know that it had certain connotations, but there's been infinite debate over what it actually
Mhm.
what might have been.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Yep.
Fascinating stuff, man. Yeah. So the Blue Lotus, Thomas, that was there's a psychedelic effect from the lotus, isn't that?
I just remember in the mid to late 90s, it was a little bit Wild West. And if it wasn't like weed or mushrooms legitimately, there was a lot of stuff you could order online that was like, that's when salvia you could order. And a lot of those places, they would also advertise Blue Lotus. And they would say, like, this is what, the ancient Egyptians did when they wanted to trip out.
Yeah.
But it always felt like one of those things that, like, yeah, but you're charging like $40.99 and there was a coupon code. So there's a little bit more to it than just wanting to reveal the
Exactly.
secrets of the ancients.
Yeah, and another one that's come up with Egypt is the monatomic white gold. And we see there in some of these temples where they have labeled, boom, Stargate. There are the depictions of the priests with the white powder cakes, which many people say is the monatomic white gold, which does have some research that has really been done in that area, specifically by James Hudson, has revealed some very, very fascinating properties. And okay, if they were ingesting this into themselves before they entered into the Stargate, is this what helped them traverse into the different dimensions? Because when you actually would like heat this up to certain levels, which would get heated up to those levels within the human body because of we're at 98 degrees, and I think it was 70 something degrees that you needed to heat that up to. It would for one, it would disappear. And we have other elements that you can make disappear by heating up to certain levels. But what they would do after that is then they would, kind of, move a spoon through it so that if the substance was still there, but you just couldn't really see it, of course, naturally it would, reshape the object, the elements that's there. They'd cool it back down and reappear in the exact same way as when it disappeared. So it made people wonder, okay, is the element itself actually crossing into another dimension when it's invisible? And other bizarre things, like when you put it in a metal pan, the pan would suddenly weigh less with the substance in it. Bizarre stuff. So it makes people wonder, okay, were they actually ingesting that, going into the Stargate room and then passing into another dimension? Or like with some of these other things, ayahuasca, the blue lotus that they're talking about there, was it to take you to an altered state of consciousness? So we can debate on that.
Well, and I mean, what is that altered state of consciousness? I mean, it
Right.
really could be taking you somewhere. It
Could be
is
to another dimension. Yeah.
I've got
giving you a little peek hole into a tear into the fabric of reality.
Right.
What were you saying, Thomas?
I've got a final sort of Egypt related question. And it might sound a little bit flippant, but it's not intended to be, but just the way that I want to ask it. Like, were they just wrong with the mummification thing, or do we just not realize that they were onto something? Because as far as I know, no one in modern cultures does anything similar to like the traditional, like very strict version of mummification. So is that just because like we've advanced and there's people doing something that's like the advanced version of that, or is it written off as like a gruesome cultural thing?
It's what happened?
Were they
with
just
the
wrong?
ancient?
Were they just
No,
wasting
it's
all
not
their
that.
time?
It's not that they were wrong. No, it's not that they were wrong. It's their culture, became embedded with all these other cultures. So, the ancient Egypt over time lost their power, and they were invaded by the Greeks. Alexander the Great came in and took over. So you had this great Greek influence that took over for a long time, and then it was the Romans that came in for a long time, and their influence came into effect. And then after them, it was the Arabs, which that was for thousands of years. So you had all these exterior influences that came in, and essentially the traditional culture died off. It was a couple thousand years ago that the hieroglyphs, the last scribe that could actually read them, he died, and it took us, almost 2,000 years later, having to decipher and figure it out to be able to pick up on that again. So it's just one of those where those customs just fell away.
That's a good point, especially with the scribes, that like, because so many things are lost to time when like the last guy that knew how to read the instruction manual stopped showing up to work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think about that nowadays, like, because I definitely remember reading this about this story about like the Britons after Rome had taken over and built aqueducts and built all these roads and London and things like that. When the Roman Empire kind of collapsed in on itself and kind of fell backward, like there was all these Britons now that were like looking up at these aqueducts and being like, I don't even know what this was.
Right.
And just, I mean, when our empire crumbles, because every empire crumbles, we're going to be looking up at, I don't know.
Well, that's my other favorite time travel trope, is like the guy that goes back to, like the medieval age, and he's got his iPhone, and it's like, look, the magic box, it does all this stuff, and they're like, cool, how do you make that? And it's like, oh, I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what happened with a lot of those ancient civilizations, is that when the people that knew how to do it died off, that technology, is why we forgot how to build things like the pyramids, like you're saying, the aqueducts, Baalbek. How did they move those stones? the technology that, got lost. We don't know what that is, because it's kind of the natural course of history. Evolution technology is not linear. There are ups and downs along the way, and things do get lost.
It kind of does feel like we're headed for a down, but who knows?
Well, the pendulum is swung. Yeah, I mean, everything is parabolic, and we've come to kind of the top, and at some point, it is gonna fall off here. So,
but I like to think that all of this life is a cycle, and that maybe we're going to get on the upswing, and maybe the next life it'll be great. And you know what? Right now, life is actually pretty good, and so I'm not going to complain at all. And I'm going to enjoy. Maybe I'll have some popcorn in a lawn chair, and I can watch a little bit of watching Rome burn. I don't know. But,
there you go.
Mike, this has been a fucking fun, interesting, awesome conversation. Thank you for joining us, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Always good talking to you guys.
Yeah, man. Tell our audience one more time, what's the best way to support you? Do you have a Patreon? What's the best way to support Mike Ricksecker and the work that he's doing?
Well, buy the books. I've got 13 of them out there. So MikeRicksecker.com. Check that out. I also have the ConnectedUniversePortal.com, which is basically it's a community where like-minded people can come together, share in all of this information. And I've got so much material out there as far as like classes that I'll hold, behind the scenes stuff. I do like video blogs. A lot of the travel stuff is out there too. So like all of my just hours and hours worth of Egypt video and going into a lot of these locations, all that's there too. So yeah, ConnectedUniversePortal.com.
Heck yeah. Thomas, do you got anything to plug tonight, buddy?
Yeah, the big one, we're going to be announcing this tomorrow, but the comic series I've been working on with Sam Tripoli, ChaosTwins.com. It's a family friendly, all ages appropriate, which just saying that because normally when I'm promoting something, it's like hide the kids, but this one, you don't have to hide the kids, made for kids. ChaosTwins.com. It's got time travel and intergalactic, interdimensional battles and all kinds of cool stuff. So that'll be announced in 24 hours from now, hopefully.
Sounds like it's right up my alley.
Check it out, man. ChaosTwins.com. I think you'll like it.
Cool. We'll do.
And I think we're going to close out. Do you want to close out on your the Frazzle Drip Fun House?
Sure. Yeah, let's go from kid friendly to not so kid friendly.
So this is a comic book that Thomas is working on, and so we're going to close with the promo. So everybody, check out this. Thomas, what's the website that they can find
this one? You can just go to frazzledripfunhouse.com, or if you go to paranoidamerican.com right now, there's a link right at the top of the page. This will be going for another week, I think, maybe another 2 weeks. I think it ends on the 12th. So you got 10 days to back it, get a backer exclusive cover, all the cool stuff.
Okay, so if you love Thomas and everything he does, please support him and go to whatever that website was.
frazzledripfunhouse.com.
That's a mouthful for me. But it's awesome.
You don't want to get too much frazzle drip in your mouth. Pro tip.
Mike, thank you, brother. We appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you both again. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Frazzle Drip Funhouse. Enter, if you dare, the world of an animatronic bear whose metallic heart beats with a thirst for justice, a hunger for revenge. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, connoisseurs of the macabre and seekers of the scandalous. Your voracious appetites for chilling narratives are about to be satiated by the heart-stopping, pulse-pounding creation of Paranoid American and Winged Sun Comics. Abandoned in the dusty corners of amusement, now awoken in the murk of wickedness perpetrated by an evil elite. And this is not your childhood fairy tale, but a macabre dance of vindication, soaked in crimson, a symphony of screams echoing in the dimly lit chambers of malevolence. Be prepared for an onslaught of ghastly gore and titillating terror. A wicked waltz through twisted hallways and blood-stained basements where only the brave dare to tread. Quake at the bear's unyielding pursuit, cackle at the sharp and sardonic one-liners, shudder at the graphic, gratuitous scenes that harken back to the glory days of B-horror flicks. Frazzle Drip Funhouse is your ticket to a thrill ride of terror. carnival of carnage where the laughs are as loud as the screams. Uncover the truth beneath the rust and the blood, and remember, nothing is as it seems. Are you ready to step into the Frazzle Drip Funhouse, where the animatronic eyes are always watching, and vengeance is a game that everyone can play? Get your backer exclusive cover on Indiegogo. For more information, visit paranoidamerican.com.